Thanks everybody for joining me back. I hope you had a wonderful lunch, a relaxing time. And now we're going to talk about how Ayurveda shows up in the modern world. So far we've gone over the history. Now you understand it is thousands upon thousands of years old. It's not new knowledge, and it has been used constantly and consistently since its inception, even through the famine, even through the fact that what we have, the knowledge that we have available is only 8% of that knowledge. It has still been used constantly, consistently. You know now that it is a holistic way of healing, in that it takes into account the whole mind and body, the spirit, and what affects what you are digesting. And by digesting, of course, remember, I mean, you have learned that digestion includes what you are seeing, what you are hearing, what you are speaking, what you are feeling, how your body and your mind processes everything that it takes in. Is when we say that Ayurveda focuses on digestion, that's what it means. Yes, of course, we do mean digestion in terms of food, because how your food digests is going to speak to is it going to help relieve inflammation, or is it going to hinder it? So that plays a critical role, but again, it also means the information that your body is taking in through your senses and through the environment that you constantly put it through. How is it digesting that information? How is your mind keeping it and then regurgitating it for you? Or is it coming at an inopportune time? Are you the one forcing thoughts on your mind, or is your mind, are you in control, or is your mind in control? This is all part of healing. I say all the time, you could eat all the broccoli you want in the world, but it's only going to get you so far if you don't include what's happening here, or to be more precise, what's happening here in the emotional center of your brain, not so much with the logical thinking part of your brain, which is closer to the top. And so now that we've talked about the doshas, and you know how the energies of the world, of the earth, can affect your body, you now know which seasons they apply to. And you know the qualities to look for in your dosha, and you've been given a good dosha quiz. I really hope and encourage you all to take that dosha quiz. And as I said in the chat, you can also look up in Banyan, on the Banyan Botanical site, the foods, the long list. It's like a 5-page list of the foods that will most benefit your dosha when it's out of balance. And then pay attention to the kind of exercise, to the kind of movement that you're doing as well. Some will irritate your dosha and some will help it to stay in balance. Walking and swimming, cycling, rowing, these will always benefit all 3 types. And as so happens, they also exercise all of your muscles all at the same time too. So you don't, if high intensity at interval training is not your thing, it's not mine, don't do it. Don't let anybody tell you that walking is not a form of exercise. My one of my business partners, her name is Antonietta. She lost 150 pounds from walking. Not speed walking, just normal person walking, 150 pounds. So I can promise you, walking is an excellent form of exercise. It's an excellent form, depending if you're walking in the summertime barefoot, it's an excellent way of grounding. Walking in a forest is also very grounding. It's really great for your mental health. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get started with how does Ayurveda show up for you in the modern world. 1 second. Okie dokie. Here we go. Okay, so how does Ayurveda show up for in the modern world? Several ways. Things that you may have heard of. I know that you're all very familiar with yoga. The Western world considers yoga to be strictly to be a form of exercise. And maybe if you're lucky, you get a teacher who talks to you about breathing. But that is the most minute form of yoga. It's not the everything. It is essential. It's an important part of yoga. It's how yogis, and just FYI, as somebody whose culture this is, who also grew up in this, a yogi is not somebody who does yoga exercise. A yogi is somebody who is, it's a sect. A yogi is somebody who is achieving a certain level or standard of living. It's a sect of monkhood. It's a level. For example, you know how in Catholicism's the priests and the bishops and they all have, there's different levels of or heights or a hierarchy. A yogi is in priesthood. A yogi is something that you strive to become. It's not, a yogi is not somebody who does yoga in the form of exercise. It is a very strenuous training that very, very few people on the planet go through. And it has little to nothing to do with turning yourself into a pretzel. So people who are proficient in yoga, maybe you may be a yoga teacher or a yoga practitioner, but you are not a yogi. That is a misrepresentation of the word. If you want to know what a real yogi is, I would encourage you to read Autobiography of a Yogi by Sri Paramahansa Yogananda. If you haven't already done so, that is a magnificent, magnificent book. There are so many bits and pieces of real nuggets of gold with regards to knowledge. And if you're really interested in self-improvement, I would say read that book. My master went through the exact same training, but my master was also a yogi. I come from the Om Tat Sat Institute of Yoga, and that's actually our lineage. So it's a great book to read. So anyhow, the actual definition you will find in the Bhagavad Gita. And that's how you pronounce it. It's not Bhagavata. Remember I said yesterday that in Sanskrit, we don't pronounce every single A. If it was written, if you saw it written in Devanagari script, which is written in Hindi, there's not an A after every letter. So it's pronounced the Bhagavad Gita. Gita means song. So the actual definition as given in the Bhagavad Gita is that yoga is a balance of the state of the mind and the body. Yoga literally means union with the self. Yoga is a balance, a state of thoughts and intellect. Yoga is a balance of behavior. Patanjali also said, he created Raj Yoga. And he said, yoga is the blocking of mental modifications so that the seer or the beholder re-identifies with the self. So that's a very long-winded way of saying that yoga, it means union of the self. And so those of us who do practice yogic breathing or yogic exercises, it is all to help to force you to live in the present, to be in the present moment, and to have union with everything in your body. Because when you're focusing on your breathing, when you're focusing on anything, whether it's holding a pose of any kind, you do have to be focused and centered. Or you're listening to your breathing, then you again are focused and centered. And all of that helps to teach you how to control your mind. In yogic, when you're following the yogic path, and in Ayurveda, more so when you're following the yogic path, which is the path I was brought up in, the great masters, the great spiritual masters always tell us that our minds are like monkeys. If you give them a chance, they're going to run helter-skelter all over the place. Your mind is a big fan of bringing up things from the past and disturbing your present. So doing things like yoga or meditation help you to control your mind. Remember, you are not your body. You are, as Sadhguru says, if you don't follow him, get on that wagon right away. Sadhguru is one of the great masters who's still living today. He's awesome. That's spelled Sadhguru. I personally love him. He's a great master. He's the master of one of my god brothers, but I love him because he reminds me of my master who left his body 8 years ago. Anyhow, he's really straightforward. He's super blunt. He's to the point. He's very pragmatic. And he explains very, very well in one of his YouTube conversations that you are not the body, the human body. The body is your machine. It is the most miraculous machine ever created in all of history. It is a self-healing machine and it is incredible, but you are not the body. You are not the mind either, he says. The mind is simply the keeper of experiences, past experiences, and it holds them in the lower emotional center of the brain, and it recalls them, one, whenever it wants, or two, whenever it thinks you want. You, on the other hand, are this incredible force of energy. Great masters have used the term or the analogy of the car. I remember hearing this so often growing up, and maybe you've heard this story as well, that the body, they always compare the body to a car. A car is it's a machine with a function. Its purpose is to get you from point A to point B. So if we were to take my car right now outside, I drive on WRX, Subaru WRX, which is a race car. And right now it's sitting out there. It's doing nothing, but it exists. It is there, but it can't do anything. It requires two things. It requires fuel. So the car is akin to the body. The car requires fuel in the form of gas. It requires a specific kind of fuel because it is a race car. So I can't just put regular unleaded in there. I got to put the more expensive stuff in there if I want the car to function at its best for the length of time that it is meant to function, for the number of years that it has been created to function. In the same way, you have your body, and your body has been created to last a minimum of 100 years. The fuel for the body, to keep the body running, there is very specific fuel in the form of food that will enable the body to keep running for the 100 years. We know that this is true because we've seen it in the blue zone areas of the world, in Okinawa, in Sardinia, in Icaria, in Loma Losa, I can't remember the name of the place. Anyways, and then the other place in Costa Rica. We've seen it over and over that when you focused your meals on being predominantly whole foods plant-based, so 80 to 90% whole foods plant-based, that kind of fuel for this kind of machine is the most beneficial. So, okay, fine. So my car is out there, it's got fuel, it exists, great, so the machine is there, and it's got fuel, I've got gas in the tank. But it still can't go anywhere. It still can't get me from A to B. What's missing? Me. The energy, the spark the light of it needs something to ignite the fuel with the machine, and then it's going to take me somewhere. Same thing with the body. You're not the body, it's your machine. You're not you're not the fuel. The fuel is for the machine. You're not your mind. That's just your map of the past, of what's happened. You are the ignition. You're like the key for the car. You are the decision maker. The car can't just go here, there, and everywhere. It needs instruction from me, the driver of the car. My body just isn't going to do anything. It's not going to walk me from my house to my neighbor's house. It needs instruction from me. My mind could pull out maps from the past and tell me, well, why don't we take this route or why don't we take that route? But what it really needs is me, the instructor, the controller, the light to say, no, you're not going to tell us what we're going to do. I'm going to make the decisions. I am the thinker of my thoughts. You, Mr. Mind, are only the keeper, the holder of the thoughts, but it's not your job to tell me what to think and what to do. I, as the energy and the controller of the body and the mind, will instruct you what to think. And through the process of eating mostly or predominantly whole foods, plant-based, so that your body will create the right gut bacteria to enable good thoughts, along with your yogic exercises and breathing and whatever other forms of stress release you employ, together with the good thoughts, that's how we're going to be the controller. And this is how Ayurveda shows up for you in modern life. So let's talk, before we move on, let me just pause this for a second. I'm just going to stop the share for a second. Share my screen. Okay. So let's talk about fasting. Let's talk a little bit about, so we've talked about one of the ways that Ayurveda shows up for you is in the form of yoga. Another way that Ayurveda shows up for you is through fasting, intermittent fasting, time-restricted eating, circadian rhythms. All of that has its root and origin, while it may be all the rage now, and I'm sure you've heard of intermittent fasting. I'm sure many of you maybe probably employ it the same way I do, but it's not new, honey. It's been around for thousands upon thousands of years. It's just now coming to the forefront in the Western world. But in Indian culture, fasting is a normal part of life. Most people, especially Hindus, most Hindus will fast at least 1, if not 2 days a week. Even Muslims have a fasting ritual when they fast for Ramadan and other festivals during the year. And of course, Hindus always fast for their festivals too. So fasting is a normal part of life for us, but in terms of healing and in terms of weight loss and so on, it's now making a greater appearance in the Western world. So fasting in Ayurveda refers to the abstinence of chewing, licking, swallowing food, as well as occasionally it could be the abstinence from drinking. There are different kinds of fasts for different reasons. And if you are going to do something as strenuous as a water fast, which I don't generally recommend at all, you would have to do that under the direction of a doctor or a spiritual master. You just don't take that on at all. I've done it, but I've also done it a couple of times through the energy of my guru, my master. But as I said, there are various ways that you can fast. You don't have to abstain from food completely. You could do a khichdi fast. As I said earlier, when we were doing the cooking class, when you're doing a khichdi fast, you are having khichdi. Technically, you want to do it for anywhere from 3 to 7 days, where you're having your warm fruits. Warm by warm, I mean either cooked or room temperature fruits in the morning. Then you're having your khichdi with vegetables for breakfast and khichdi for vegetables with dinner, and then no eating in between meals. And you do that for 3 to 7 days, and it gives you this really great cleanse and boost. So let's move on. So the purpose of fasting is to allow for rest and repair within the body, to gain control of the senses, because when you are fasting, when you're fasting from food or you're abstaining from food, your body is getting a chance to do its rest and repair, but also during the process of rest and repair, you're also helping to release the buildup of toxic emotions and experiences that you've been holding in the entire time. So it helps by fasting. You help to gain control of your feelings and your senses. And then, of course, it helps to reset the whole circadian rhythm of the body if you've been out of whack. Maybe you've been a shift worker for a while and now you're out of whack and you need to bring that back into balance. So as we know, many people around the world are overfed and undernourished. You can see that over and over again, especially within North America. The too many people, you could tell just by the rate of diabetes and obesity together or each one separately. There's so much food that goes to waste in North America, yet none of it has prana, the force of life. It's a lot of fast food. It's a lot of quick and easy nutrient lacking food. There are no nutrients in the food. Even the content of the soil, it's full of pesticides and fungicides and fertilizers. It's much more different now than it was when our grandparents were alive. So eating an abundance of low quality foods can lead to dis-ease in the body. And we all know that. We've seen that time and time again. There are hundreds upon thousands of studies proving that. But unfortunately, there are a great number of areas throughout North America where there are food deserts. A food desert is a place where you don't have access to fresh food, where everything is fast food. You'll see them a lot in urban cities, especially throughout the US. Lots of food deserts where fresh fruit, fresh vegetables are almost unheard of. You have to drive for miles to get to a good grocery. And then can you even afford those foods? That's what we mean by poor quality as well. And so the people are left with foods that don't support their overall mental and physical health. Digestion then suffers. When digestion suffers, so does mental health will suffer, because the two go together. Always remember that the brain and the gut are connected through the vagus nerve or the superhighway. And for every one message that the brain sends to your gut will send 9 messages up to your brain. Your digestive system controls not only your metabolism and your weight, it controls your thoughts, it controls your endocrine system, which is your hormones. It controls a vast majority of things that happen in your body. So when you're not able to feed your body the necessary foods to keep the gut health balanced, all hell breaks loose. So in Ayurveda, we always say you're not what you eat, you are what you digest, which I've already reviewed for you when we just started the recording again. When your digestive fire, which is referred to as Agni literally means fire. When your digestive fire is low, instead of efficiently digesting your foods, that creates what's a toxin called ama. Ama just means undigested food. So whenever there is a disturbance within the body, whether it's through anxiety, whether it's through mental health, past traumas, whatever it may be, or current traumas, it will create a sense of emotional disturbance within you. And then it's going to hamper how your food is digested. Because digesting food is the process within the body that requires the most amount of time. For example, and by digestion, we mean going into your mouth and out your bum. That's the whole process of digestion. So fruits take approximately 6 to 8 hours to fully digest. Vegetables take anywhere from about 8 to 12 hours to digest. And animal protein takes anywhere from 48 hours to 72 hours to digest. Whole grains and legumes take a roughly 12 to 24 hours to digest. So now if you think about it, if you, let's say you had a meal, we just had lunch. And let's say, for example, Sally was in the group. She had lunch with us. Awesome. She had a whole foods plant-based lunch. So that's going to be digestion for the next 24 hours because her lunch also included some whole grains. Maybe she had some quinoa with her vegetables and she had some tofu in there and so on and so forth. But along the way, as the afternoon goes along, Sally gets some bad news. Her dog all of a sudden attacked some kid. And so this now creates creates excess anxiety within Sally. So what's going to happen for her to deal with that? There's a panic situation, there's fear, there's concern for the child, there's concern for the dog. What are they going to do? All of these thoughts go rumbling through Sally's head. And in the meantime, digestion started at 1 o'clock when she started having, or what time did we stop for lunch? At 12:30. Digestion began. So now the body has to go into stop mode of the digestion. Ama, or undigested food matter, is sure to accumulate because whenever you're in a state, and I'm not sure if I went over this yesterday, but because I've been teaching back-to-back classes in this group and in another one, but when you are in a state of anxiety, whether it is chronic anxiety, because of recurring thoughts, or a situation that has just happened. The exact same things happened every single time. Your digestion is automatically shut down. So any food that Sally was eating is going to stay in the stomach or in different parts of her digestive system and not move along the way they're supposed to. And then energy will be sent to her extremities, so that she can deal with whatever she needs to deal with. Adrenaline and cortisol will be pumped out. And her blood pressure will go up. So more energy is being pumped through the body, more oxygen is being pumped through the brain, so on and so forth. So the chances of, not chances, but the fact that she's going through that anxiety, the undigested food matter will accumulate. So now let's say Sally resolves the whole situation. Everything is fine. The child is fine. The dog is fine. Everything is good. Sally comes back to class. But while I'm busy rambling on, Sally recalls in her mind when she got the call, like during class, oh my God, this is what happened. And so Sally keeps thinking about it. And then throughout the night, while Sally's getting ready for bed and she's saying her affirmations and doing her deep breathing, but she's still really worried about what happened. And so she continues to replay the situation over and over again. And so because she keeps replaying it, her body continues to experience it over and over again. And if she continues to do this on an ongoing basis, not necessarily consistently, but just ongoing, an autoimmune disorder or chronic inflammation will develop for two reasons. One, because of the ama, because of the undigested food, because it is sitting in pockets of the body where it's not supposed to be. And then that will also contribute towards gas and bloating and indigestion. If the thoughts continue to ramble on in her head, then she could possibly develop GERD, which is severe acid reflux. And then so that she's got the undigested material there. And so chronic illness or autoimmune disorder could possibly develop because she's keeping her body in a low grade form of heightened anxiety. And so that just, if you are prone, if you were born with the genes for certain illnesses, then by keeping yourself in that heightened state of anxiety with a low grade form of the heightened anxiety, it could upregulate or wake up the genes for those illnesses to occur. So the next paragraph says, Ayurveda believes that ama is the root cause of all disease. That's my segue. Ama is a result of poor digestion. When you first accumulate ama, you may experience bad things, like you may experience more cravings and fatigue and fogginess, anxiety, and so on and so forth. And if these habits continue, then things will get much worse for you. And eventually you may get clogging within the lymphatic system. The bad gut bacteria will poke holes in the lining and get out between the wall between your gut and your immune system. And then you'll have leaky gut, and then you'll have an autoimmune disorder. So the whole point is, let's do our level best by living in the present as often as possible and doing as many of the things that will enable joy more often than not to help the body stay in that self-healing mode. So the benefits of fasting. So the digestive, sorry, give me one quick sec. Right, just want to make sure that's the next thing we're talking about. So the benefits of fasting. It gives rest to your organs. When we get into circadian rhythms in a moment, you'll understand why it is necessary for all the organs and all your cells to go through a rest, rejuvenate, and repair cycle. It's really important for proper health. Just think of yourself when you just think of yourself in terms of work. When you're going all the time, you need to have rest, because if you don't get rest, that reaches a stage where you can't give anymore, you can't go anymore, and maybe you get cranky, maybe you get tired, maybe you pull a muscle, something. Same thing with our organs. If we don't give rest to the organs, there's only going to be so much that they're going to be able to continue to run at 100% before they start to give out. Remember that chronic illness and autoimmune disorders, chronic inflammation and autoimmune disorders don't just show up overnight. They take years and years to develop. Alzheimer's starts in childhood. Cancer takes an average of 5 to 10 years to build up. Many autoimmune disorders take several years to build. Remember, your body has 6 main defense systems, and your defense systems are always working in the background, behind the scenes, without you even knowing, to remove toxins, to remove bad bacteria, to support your mental and physical health. But if it's not getting the support from you physically and mentally, then there's going to come a time when those 6 main defense systems are going to send up a white flag to say, dude, I can't do this anymore, man. I'm starting to give up. And all of a sudden you start to feel symptoms. So when you feel a symptom of something, or you see a symptom, maybe it's psoriasis or eczema, or maybe you're putting on weight, and or maybe you're losing weight and you're not doing anything to lose the weight, or maybe your hair is thinning or something. Whenever your body sends out a symptom, that is its way of saying, I'm starting to give up. I don't have much more to give if you don't stop. Illness is always the body's way of regulating itself to keep you in homeostasis. And when it can't do it anymore, when it's starting to lose the battle, it sends out a symptom for you to say, I'm listening. I'm paying attention. Oh, this is hurting. Let me see what's happening. Why did this happen to me? Okay, let me stop doing. Let me find out why it happened so I could stop doing it and help my body. That's all illness really is. And fasting helps to support that. Other benefits of fasting. Resting the digestive tract, absolutely, super important. Freeing up energy, always important, especially to support your immune system. You know how they always say, well, I don't know if they always say, I've always learned having been raised in the yogic system, that when you have a fever, don't go out and exercise, don't do any high intensity, this and that, because your body is reserving all of the energy that it has for healing. It wants you to rest. For example, if growing up, your mom or your grandma or whoever made chicken noodle soup for you whenever you were feeling under the weather, do you know why? The reason that people were fed chicken noodle soup is because chicken has that oh, I can never remember the word right now. Anyhow, it has that amino acid in it that makes you tired, that makes you sleepy. You know, like after you have a big turkey dinner and you always feel tired after, it's a combination of turkey and wine, or even turkey by itself, that makes you feel tired. And so people were given chicken noodle soup when they're small or growing up when they're unwell, because it forces you to fall asleep. When you are asleep or under rest, it gives the body a chance to heal. When you are awake, then the body has no choice but to function and do the things you are instructing it to do. But it does all of its repair during fasting times, whether that fasting is between sleep and wake, or whether that fasting is within a time that you have indicated for the next 3 days, I'm not going to have whatever. But fasting is required for supporting your immune system. Learning how to fast is very important. We'll talk about that in a second. And incorporating fasting helps to calm your mind as well, helps to soothe your mind and calm your mind. And oh, I wonder why Lynn is trying to get in. Give me 1 second. That's weird. Sorry. She's from one of my other classes. I don't know why that was happening. And as energy increases, the mind becomes more clear due to fasting. Absolutely. The more, when you employ fasting in your regular routine, remember I said that it helps to unload or offload your pent up emotions. So it also helps to give you clarity, because now you're not carrying as much baggage, so to speak. And as our bodies clear out unwanted toxins, we can connect with our conscious much more easily. And this is why many, I'm going to say not even many, all spiritual traditions, all cultures have some form of fasting. I love what Rumi has said about the great master Rumi, what he said about fasting. Fasting is the principle of medicine. Fast and see the strength of the spirit reveal itself. It's an incredible experience. So before we move on to circadian rhythms, let's talk a minute about coming out of a fast. So remember I said there are lots of different ways that you can employ a fast, many different ways. There's no one way to do it. But whenever there has been restricted eating, you want to come out of your fast or break your fast very gently. So you don't break a fast by hoarding food, by suddenly, let's say you've been, so the fast that we were trained on was to do a no salt fast for 30 days. And we do that 3 times a year. By no salt, we mean nothing that contains salt, no added salt, no whole grains, no legumes. It was a very strict, special kind of fast that we did. So it was really just fruits and vegetables. with minimal amounts of with nuts, sorry, for protein, nuts and seeds. So anyhow, we were trained to do that for 30 days, 30 days a month, 3 times a year. And to come out when it was time to break that fast after the 30 days, in the beginning, we would just be so happy to see real food, to be able to have khichdi or vegetables that have salt in them, or bread or whatever. And we would overeat right away. And of course, your stomach shrinks when you fast. So it's not able to process that volume of food anymore. So the real way, when you're breaking a fast, the way to break a fast that is safe for your body and good for your digestion, first is with fruit. Always break your fast with fruit, room temperature or warm. It could be cooked even, but as long as it is minimum room temperature. Berries are a great way to break a fast. So if you were to ever follow any of my teaching with regards to how to start your morning, I always have my students start their morning with fruit, whether it's fruit with a bit of oats or fruit with a bit of nuts or just a bowl of fruit. Fruit is the most easiest to digest food in the world. It has the fiber that your body needs, but it's also 99% water. So it's super easy on your digestive system. Then you wait a little half an hour. And if you're still hungry after what you've eaten, then you could have something a little bit more substantial, but still not raw food. Raw food we'll talk about it when we get to food timing. We'd have raw food between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. So whether you're talking about breaking a fast from a long-term fast or you're just talking about breakfast, start with easy to digest foods, or even a soup is a really great way to break a fast. Something that has a lot of water in it, that has been fully cooked or easy, like fruit, to digest. Then you can slowly add back other foods. Let me pause this for a second. Okie doke. So we are going to talk about circadian rhythms. So circadian rhythms, intermittent fasting, or time-restricted eating is exceptionally healing for the body. Circadian rhythms, oh, bloody hell, as per usual. It helps if I share my screen. There you go. Circadian rhythms, as well as fasting or time-restricted eating, all have their roots in Ayurveda. Everything, it all comes from there. The leading authority these days in circadian rhythms is Dr. Sachin Panda, and his book, The Circadian Code, is excellent. I highly recommend that everybody read the book, especially if you are a shift worker. And just so that we understand clearly what a shift worker is, or who a shift worker is. A shift worker is anybody who wakes during the night and sleeps during the day, who does opposite to what the sun does, for example. So that could be anybody who works in a factory. It could be anybody who drives, like a pizza delivery guy, an Uber driver or a Lyft driver, could be a new mom or new parent, could be a teenager, could be somebody in college or university. It could be grocery store workers where the groceries open 24 hours a day. So it would be the night shift workers. Obviously, the obvious paramedics, police officers, first responders, firemen or nurses, doctors. These are all shift workers. And being a shift worker or or operating opposite to the sun has a critical impact on your mental and physical health. So the Circadian Code is a book that I believe everybody should read. He does have a very small chapter in it with regards to what foods to eat. Don't listen to that chapter. Dude doesn't know his nose from his toes. But with regards to when to eat, his instructions are on point and they completely align with Ayurveda 100% and the doshas. Because remember, not only do the doshas have a regulating, not only do they regulate the seasons and your personality, but they also regulate the times of day, which we will talk about shortly in our talk on food timing. So we're going to go from now until 2:30, so half an hour, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll move on. So we'll talk about circadian rhythms right now. So circadian rhythms are the body's 24-hour cycle of operation for your hormones, for your behaviors, for everything. It is a 24-hour cycle for everything that happens within your body. It regulates your hormones, it regulates your sleep, it regulates your hunger, your metabolism. It eventually in that way affects your body weight and whether you will develop disease in the body or not. And as I said, Dr. Sachin Panda is the leading authority on circadian rhythms. The circadian rhythms is the study of circadian rhythms is the study of how organs, genes, and cells all go, how their cycle of rest, repair, and rejuvenate. And as I said, it corresponds directly with the doshas, and that's where you could see how circadian rhythms has its foundation in Ayurveda. Another way in which Ayurveda shows up for you in modern living. When you combine circadian rhythms with intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating, research has shown that that enables the body to remain in a state of homeostasis and to reduce the prevalence of the development of autoimmune disorders or chronic inflammation. And it helps the body to build resilience towards the stressors that it experiences due to what you are digesting through your senses. So let's talk a little bit about Dr. Sachin Panda's research. So, as I said, your circadian clock, which works with the sun, the same way that Ayurveda explains how your body works. It regulates your immune system, weight loss, sleep, and every organ and every cell and every gene down to your DNA. Circadian rhythms are programmed right into your DNA for rest and repair. Where am I going with this? Right. Okay. So Dr. Sachin Panda's research found, he's done a lot of research on this. He's been researching it for years and for decades. And his research has found that for those people who eat within an 8 to 12 hour window, resulted in a slimmer and healthier outcome versus those who ate outside of that, who ate more within a 13 to 16 hour window, even when they both ate the same calories. So what his research showed is they did some research and they gave people the same amount of calories, and they had one group eat within an 8 to 12 hour window and another group eat within a 15 to 16 hour window. And those who ate within the 8 to 12 hour window and eating the same kind of food, same amount of calories, lost weight, and the others gained weight. This relates back to how our grandparents ate. Circadian rhythms is a really great way of watching how our grandparents ate. I remember very clearly when I spent my summers in Trinidad by my grandparents, and my grandparents would eat a very small amount in the morning. Their main meal would be lunch, and then they'd have a small amount at dinner again. And remember, I said the body works with the sun. Remember how the sun is weak in the morning, it's vibrant, and at its full strength in the middle of the day, and then it starts to weaken in the afternoon. And the body, the human body works the exact same way. Dr. Panda's team discovered, so you've heard of melatonin, right? Which is the sleep hormone. So Dr. Panda's research found that there is a protein called melanopsin, and it's a blue light sensitive protein. Melanopsin is what triggers melatonin, and it helps to regulate sleep and alertness. So when melanopsin is exposed to blue light, so that light coming from any form of screen, your computer, your laptop, your iPad, your phone, whatever it is, then it suppresses melatonin, the sleep hormone. So we always want to minimize blue light as often as possible from 4 o'clock, because even though melatonin is produced in the morning, how is melatonin produced? By you getting daylight in your eyes close to when you wake up. So you may have heard this in other circles, in other healing circles, or from other nutritionists or whatever, but there are quite a few neurologists who've done some research and found that melatonin, the sleep hormone, is triggered to be produced, not released, just produced in the morning soon after you wake up. It's produced in abundance if you get direct daylight into your eyes. So as often as possible, depending on where you live, if you could get a minimum of 10 minutes of daylight, sunlight, directly into your eyes, not through shades, preferably not through a window, but to actually be outside for 10 minutes, if and when possible, that triggers the suppression of melanopsin, and it will trigger the production of melatonin. And then your body will hold the melatonin until 4 o'clock. Between the hours of 4 p.m. and 5 p.m., melatonin starts to be released, and it helps to start slowing the body down. So melanopsin is super important. Remember, that's the blue light sensitive hormone. Even check the light bulbs in your house. I have a lighting background, so if you know the difference between a warm white and a cool white, warm whites are like the whites on my Christmas tree behind me. They're a kind of yellowish, amberish light. That's a warm white. A cool white gives this kind of harsh blue-white light. Check the light bulbs in your house. You want to replace any cool lights that you have, which will give off blue light. You want to replace them with warm whites. And then in the evening time, you want to start setting the tone, especially if you have trouble sleeping. I don't have trouble sleeping, but I live with somebody who does. You want to start setting the tone for relaxation and for sleep. By around 6 o'clock, you want to start dimming the lights and enabling the process of calmness so that the melatonin can do its job with the rest of the body to put you into a sleepy state of mind. So Dr. Panda's research also showed that the body has a master clock that gets input directly from the light sensors, so what goes through your eyes, and that master clock is what sets everything in motion. So for shift workers who are exposed to blue light all the time through the fluorescent lights of where they are, or screen light from their computers or laptops or whatever, their master clock is constantly being offset to a time that is not going to support good health. And then, of course, it also triggers you to eat foods that don't support your digestive health either. His team found that genes and organs turn on and off at different times during the 24-hour period. And that they go through a light and dark fasting feeding cycle. So even your genes, your organs, your cells, they all go through this fasting feeding cycle. And this helps to not only manage energy, but it also helps to build resilience towards stressors. Studies that he has done has shown that by chronic circadian rhythm disruption, so when you're not within sync of your body's natural cycles, it increases the risk of metabolic disease. Metabolic diseases are like anything to do with your heart. So heart and stroke, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, fatty liver, diabetes. These are all metabolic and cancer, all metabolic diseases. Okay, sorry, I don't want to go too far ahead. Give me 1 second. So when you employ caloric restriction, his research showed that caloric restriction sustains the rhythms of the body and alleviates metabolic disease. So there was an article written in the Journal of Pineal Research on May of 2004 that researchers found that circadian rhythms of light and darkness triggered neurotransmitters, or your happy hormones. So when your body, so what that means is that when you allow your body to go through the rest and repair and rejuvenate states, when you're employing the rhythms of your body, the circadian rhythms, then your happy hormones are triggered much more easily. Specifically, the hormones that are triggered through proper circadian rhythm is dopamine, which is your #1 happy hormone. FYI, if you know somebody who has Parkinson's, one of the causes of Parkinson's is insufficient levels of dopamine. So the neurotransmitters that are triggered through proper circadian rhythm are dopamine, GABA, GABA, which is gamma aminobutyric acid. GABA is your calming hormone. It's the one that helps to regulate anxiety and lower stresses and fears. And glutamate. Glutamate is the hormone for mood stabilization, learning, and memory. So again, keeping within your body's rhythms as often as possible is essential to mental health as well. So as I said, your circadian rhythms are completely written right into your DNA. So what does it look like when your circadian rhythms are working? So your circadian clock is working when, I'm sorry, I want to try to phrase this differently. So let's think about wake and sleep cycles. You want to try to get to bed by 10 p.m. Unless you're a shift worker, as often as possible, be in your bed no later than 10 p.m. If you could be in your bed by 9:30 so that you could try to get through all of your nighttime routines to be asleep by between 10:30. That is ideal. And it follows the doshas as well, because the timing for the pitta dosha during the day is between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m., which is why we have our largest meal at lunchtime. But the pitta dosha, remember pitta means fire, high energy. The pitta dosha comes back at nighttime between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. That's the time when your body goes into what's called repair mode. So for example, your stomach is employing the enzymes to seal all the holes that have been created from the acids from your stomach, from the food you ate. Your brain is removing all the unnecessary information, the clutter, and retaining or putting into boxes the memories that it needs to hold on to. And whatever immune work needs to be done, all of that is happening between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. Now, if you are awake during that time, and so all that, keep in mind that all of that activity requires a lot of energy because it's during the pitta time, it's during the high fire, high energy time, 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. If you are awake during this time, your body is going to sense it, and it's going to ask you for fuel, for food. It's going to ask you for fuel to sustain the energy that is required to do that work. But also, if you are awake during that time, you are going to hamper every one of those processes that needs to take place. So it's automatically going to go into that pitta dosha time. And because it knows that it senses it for your body to do the work it needs to do between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., it requires a lot of energy. Your body expects and assumes that you're going to be asleep. And so what it's going to do is use your stores of fat as energy to perform all this work. Great. So we enable a little bit of weight loss. Awesome. It does all the work. But if you are awake, it's going to ask for food. And so you're going to eat. And so now you're going to throw the whole clock off, where your stomach was supposed to be using this time to repair the lining of the stomach. Where your body was supposed to use this time to repair the stomach. Now it's got to set the whole process of digestion on all over again. And remember that digestion uses the most amount of energy in the body. And it's also, now you're going to be, if you've ever suffered with brain fog, and maybe you don't even know if you have brain fog because you've never been without it. Maybe you've not had enough clarity to know when you have brain fog and when you don't. So the chances of your body being able to perform the actions that it needs to keep the brain clear, to repair all of the organs, all of that is going to be either suspended or diminished in its capacity because you're awake. So while it's awake, you're making your body do this, that, and the other. So again, you're working against the rhythm. We don't want to work against the rhythm. So when possible, try your level best to get into bed by, say, 9:30 so that you can fall asleep between 10 and 10:30. Lights out, no screens. Try your level best. I've been trying to do this now for 2 months, and I've noticed a huge difference. Again, I don't have problems sleeping, but to say stay asleep and get sound sleep, to feel alive and energetic when I wake up, to feel like I don't need to stay in bed, to not be sluggish when I wake up in the morning. This is really helping me a lot. I've never, in the past, I've not paid attention to how the doshas affect my day as much as how they affect my food. So try to employ that. So we're going to bed at 10. We're not eating. Awesome. Body does its work. It does its repair mode, and then it goes into rejuvenate and rest mode between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. It's in its rest mode where nothing big is happening. Your body needs that rest. From 4 a.m., between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m., melatonin starts to be released. So what is going on with the body clock between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m.? Melatonin gets released. Your blood pressure around 5 o'clock, your body slightly elevates your blood pressure. It also slightly elevates your body temperature. It's trying to create an atmosphere of uncomfortability. I understand that's not a word. Discomfort. Thank you. The body is trying to put you in a state of discomfort so that you will wake up. So it raises your body temperature. It elevates your cortisol, which is your main stress hormone, just a little bit. It elevates your blood. And because it elevates your blood pressure, it elevates your cortisol levels. And as I said, it starts the release of the melatonin that it's been holding on to all day long. And so, just give me one sec. And so that's how you end up waking up. So now between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m., your body is in the kapha mode. Between, let's say 5, let's say around, it's more like 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., it goes into the kapha mode. So you'll notice that in the morning, you don't spring out of bed ready to run a marathon or anything like that. That crap's not happening. But you do wake up feeling refreshed, but not necessarily able to just take on everything that's coming at you at the time because you're in kapha mode, because you are in flush mode. In the morning, between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m., your body goes through what's called, within the circadian rhythm, it's in what's called flush mode. So it wants to flush out all of the toxins and bacteria from your various lymph nodes. And that's why we drink warm water in the morning, especially if we put lemon in it. And then it wants to flush out all the toxins and bacteria in the liquid form from your bladder. And it wants to flush out all of the toxins and bacteria in the form of solid waste from your bowels. So during kapha mode, we want to always have something warm, soft, easy to digest, because we are supporting that mode. Water to flush out the system, soft, ripe fruits, berries are fantastic to have as your first food in the morning, especially blueberries, because they are the #1 Alzheimer's fighting food in the world. And then we go into, after kapha, we go into pitta. That happens between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. That's when you want to have your most robust meal. And I'm sure a lot of you are like me. You grew up having soup and salad, or maybe you even skip lunch. Lunch was never the main meal of my day. It was either, most of the time I didn't have breakfast. It's usually dinner time. But if we think about how the sun works, and if we think about how our grandparents ate, you'll realize, oh yeah, my grandparents didn't necessarily eat the whole farm at breakfast. They had enough to sustain them, but they had their main meal at lunchtime. Even if you think of now about various cultures around the world, Sunday afternoon meal is the biggest meal of the day on a Sunday. Because innately, we know our body is asking for the fuel, because it is supposed to get you through the next 6 hours from, say, 12 o'clock in the afternoon to 6 o'clock in the evening, which is your high energy time. It's supposed to get you through those hours on the fuel that you're giving it. And so if all you're doing is giving your body a little bit of a bowl of soup, which is 90% water, or a salad, which is 95% water, how do you expect it to function at a high capacity mentally and physically for 6 hours on water? That's not going to work. That's why we want to have our most robust meal at lunchtime. What does a robust meal look like? A robust meal includes a good source of protein. So that could be tofu, it could be legumes of any kind, it could be chicken, it could be fish. Then you also want to have half a plate of, well, coming into the winter months, we want to have cooked food most of the time. But if you still want to have a salad, then you can have a half a plate of salad. But it would be better if you had warmed vegetables, so like a stir fry or sauteed vegetables instead. Dark leafy greens. And then you want to have a whole grain or a slice of sourdough bread. Sourdough bread can be eaten by everybody who does not have celiac disease, because sourdough bread not only is a probiotic food, but it also is 99% gluten-free. Just make sure there's no sugar and no milk type products in your sourdough bread. And yeah, so vegetables, whole grains, legumes, or animal protein if that's what you eat with your lunch. And remember that your protein needs to fit in this palm of your hand. It's no bigger than a deck of cards. So that's what, 3 fingers, right? Size of your protein would be 3 fingers wide and long. And so that's what happens between, so we're in Pitta mode between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. And then we go into the Vata mode in the afternoon. And then that's between, Vata is between 3 and 6, I believe. And then again, remember, melatonin is released at 4. And so here's an interesting fact. Melatonin is released at 4. Melatonin also helps to suppress insulin. So why is dinner supposed to be a smaller version of lunch? And why is it all cooked food? Always cooked food at dinner time, no raw food. The reason is because raw vegetables and meat in general is difficult to digest, but raw meats, let's say if you go for carpaccio or tartare or something like that, they're extremely difficult to digest. And so you should have those during the day if you're going to eat them. And the reason is because everything starts to slow down and go back into kapha mode between, I think it's 6 to 9 is kapha mode again. Anyhow, the interesting part about that is that insulin, the rate at which your body can produce insulin is reduced once the sun goes down. Remember, your body operates with the sun. The clock operates with the sun. Early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. That's no joke. That's the real deal. So when you eat late at night, let's say you're eating after 8 p.m., of course, your body, as long as your pancreas is working well and still producing insulin, you're going to be able to produce the insulin. You're going to be able to produce insulin for your food to stabilize blood glucose levels. But the amount of insulin that is needed for the food, for the glucose regulation, is not the same in the evening as it is during the day. It runs down to a drip, drip, drip amount is how Dr. Sachin Banda explains it. So let's say it's Friday night, you go to a movie, the movie is a 9 o'clock movie, you're having popcorn at 10 o'clock at night, no worries, you think nothing's going wrong, you're doing just fine. What you're actually doing is creating an atmosphere for not only weight gain, but for diabetes and for insulin resistance, which will eventually lead to diabetes, because you're forcing your body to digest off the clock. It doesn't want to do this food. It does not want to digest food at 10 p.m. It wants you asleep so it could repair from all the food. So you're forcing it to do something opposite to what it knows to do. But on top of that now, the pancreas is supposed to be asleep. It's supposed to be resting or in repair mode or doing anything except producing insulin. But because it senses food, because it gets a brain message from the brain, hey, pancreas, Sally just started eating some popcorn. I'm going to need some insulin to deal with the food she's eating. And pancreas says, all right, but dude, like most of my guys already went to repair. So only have a couple guys available to produce the insulin you're looking for. And brain says, okay, whatever, man, just give me whatever insulin you have. So that we can get this done. And so the amount of insulin that is produced is very, very limited. That's not good, because then your blood glucose levels are going to spike. So we don't want to eat late at night for those two main reasons: weight gain and insulin resistance. You always want to be insulin sensitive. So let me just quickly flip through my notes. Give me 1 second. Oh, quick little note. Remember I was telling you about melanopsin, which is what is the blue light sensitive hormone. Melanopsin the production of melanopsin helps to reduce depression and increase alertness. So that's really important to know as well, especially if you suffer from seasonal affective disorder. It's really important to know that. So in modern life, so let's think about times of my grandparents. When my grandparents were alive and living in Trinidad and so on, they were up with the sun and to bed with the sun. By the time 8:00 p.m., even now, like in Barbados, my sister-in-law lives in Barbados, and everybody's up at 5 and everybody is in bed at 8:00 in the evening. We went to visit them recently, this April, and I was shocked, completely shocked, that the whole family was getting ready for bed at 8 p.m. and lights out at 8:30. My husband and I were in bed, and we were forced to go to bed because, well, you don't want to go against the family rules and there's nobody to talk to except yourself. So we went into our room, and it was so strange. It was a really strange feeling going to sleep at 8:30, but oh my God, we had no problem waking up at 5:30, refreshed and feeling good. I loved going to bed at 8:30 and I woke up at 5:30, no problem. First time in my life I had ever done that. And I felt energized and happy all day long. Not that things didn't go wrong to disturb the happiness, but there was joy. You know what I mean? Like I just felt good. We had packed days. We were doing activities back to back to back. We were eating out, so we weren't always getting the best food in, but that rest between 8:30 and 5 a.m. was incredible. I've never felt that good before. I tried to implement it when we came back to Toronto. I could only sustain it for 2 hours. And then once again, I was back into my normal routine of going up to bed at 10. If I was lucky, I'd switch off my phone by 10:30, if not 11. And, I'm still trying. I'm a constant work in progress. But what's important about this to know is that because we spend so much time outside, so we were talking about my grandparents up with the sun and to bed with the sun. They didn't need a clock. They knew when the sun is up, you're working, you're doing. When the sun goes down, you start to slow down your day. And when the sun goes to bed, so do you. When modern times now, though, in most places, we're constantly exposed to light. To artificial light from your light bulbs, light from your screens of all kinds, light all over the place. And because of this, the blue light, as I said earlier, activates the melanopsin, and the melanopsin production confuses the brain. So your eyes see that it's dark outside. Dark outside means I need to go to bed. But when you look outside your window, but then you look at your screen and you're getting constantly activated by this blue light. So the melanopsin says to the brain, dude, it's not bedtime. It's still time to be awake. Suppress that melatonin. We don't need it. It's still time to be awake because you're constantly being affected by the lights from the screen. So what I said earlier about dimming your lights, turning off screens, it's really important for sleep production. Indoor light is not rich. Sorry, indoor light is rich in blue light during the day. Let me rephrase that. Daylight is not rich in blue light. Artificial light is rich in blue light. So you want to be careful with when you turn your lights on and off, and be prudent about when you start dimming the lights and turning them off, and setting the mood for rest and relaxation. And of course, remember, they also produce all the happy hormones. So before we go any further into circadian rhythms and more about food and moving on, and food timing and food combining, let's take a 15-minute break. Let me just pause the recording here. One sec. Give me one sec. Screen again. Let's share my screen, and that's not how you share your screen. Oh, technology. There we go. Okay. Let's move this over. So we're wrapping up. We're wrapping up circadian rhythms with regards to food, not food combining, but circadian rhythms with regards to food. So we've already learned that when we eat late at night, when we are up late at night, let's not even get into the food part, when we're just awake at night, when we should be asleep, when we are skipping meals, when we are working against our clocks rather than with the flow of the clock, working in that way creates an atmosphere for reduced sleep, acid reflux, which could lead to GERD, which is a severe form of acid reflux. It could lead to suppressed healing and immunity, as well as low memory retention and brain fog. So paying attention to how you do, what you do, when you do, is all part of the healing process. So if you're seeing somebody, for example, if you're in the process of going through some healing, and you're seeing a practitioner whose only focus is food, or whose focus is only on supplements or medication, now you know that healing is a much broader term and requires many other modalities to be employed to enable successful healing. And keep in mind that the body is the most miraculous machine. Always tell yourself that. Your body is the most miraculous self-healing machine on the planet. There is nothing that humans have ever created that could ever stand up to the miracles and the miraculousness of the human body. And so while it is able to tolerate and adapt to the things that you force it to do, that doesn't mean that that's the right thing. So for example, in my nutrition classes, when I once said to a client, here are all the reasons why you should stop eating North American dairy, whether it's milk or cheese or whatever it is that you're eating. And she said, well, it doesn't bother my stomach. I can go ahead and continue eating. And I had given her in the talk, it was a talk specifically on dairy, and I had given her every reason why it's harmful to your mental and physical health with regards to depression and diabetes and obesity and autism and so many things. And she came back to me and said, yeah, well, it doesn't hurt my stomach. So I understood that she was not understanding what I was saying. But I did say to her, just because you don't feel discomfort or experience any kind of symptom doesn't mean that you're not harming your body. doesn't mean that the food is not doing damage. Just because your body has accommodated for what you're making it do, doesn't mean that it's not creating an atmosphere for ill health. It just means it hasn't given up on you yet. So that's just a little spiel on how accommodating the body and how tolerant the body can be. So we already talked about insulin with regards to when you're eating your food. And this doesn't, remember that this doesn't apply only to people like me who have insulin resistance. This applies to everybody, whether you have diabetes or PCOS or insulin resistance or not at all. You want to always go with the rhythms and not against them. You don't want to ever create an atmosphere for ill health to develop. And eating late at night can do that. So where do I want to go with that? So we were talking about food and food timing with regards to the circadian clock. So let's talk for a quick second about, remember we were talking about the Vata dosha. And that the Vata dosha, as well as all the others for that matter, but especially Vata predominant people, require routine, and how good routine is for all of the doshas, but especially for Vata, because it tends to be more of a scattered, flighty kind of energy. So when you are following the rhythms of the your circadian clock, a regulated eating pattern or routine enables your body to anticipate actions, and it enables your body to anticipate food. It enables your body to anticipate certain actions as well. And so it prepares ahead of time. For example, the Ayurvedic way of mindful eating. Why do we always say, when you have a cup of tea, or in my case, lemon water, or you're going to eat something, you're going to eat a plate of food. Why do we smell? Why do we take a whiff, a smell of the food before we even eat it? Why do you lift your plate to your nose and inhale the scents? Because the minute your nose picks up the scent, it sends a message to the brain. These are the foods that I smell. Brain says to the gut, dude's down there. I'm expecting, she just smelled, she made khichdi and tomatoes. So I smell, the nose smells haldi, turmeric, it smells cumin, it smells tomatoes. Guys down in the gut, you guys get ready, get those stomach acids ready to receive these foods. And so the stomach does that work. So your body is not only the most miraculous healing machine on the planet, it also has its own intelligence. Your brain has its own your brain has its own brain. It is its own brain. Your heart has its own brain. Your gut has its own brain. It is an intelligent, the body is an intelligent form of life, let's say. And so by having a routine and being regulated in your processes, it enables the body to regulate itself and anticipate certain things. So regulated eating pattern or a routine of eating allows the body to anticipate food and expect a load of glucose at a certain time so that it can respond accordingly. Technically, your first meal of the day should be within the first 2 hours of waking. You really don't want to skip breakfast as often as possible. You don't have to sit down to a plate of bacon and eggs and sausage, because that's not what your body wants anyways. Even if you could just have a small bowl of berries, if in general you're not accustomed to eating breakfast, something a little bit bigger, like like some baked oatmeal or something, that's fine. But as long as you don't skip meals, don't skip meals. Let me pause the recording real quick for a second. I wonder if I can pause it without having to. Bear with me one second. Sharing my screen. Okay. So as I said, for breakfast, you want to have it preferably within 2 hours of waking. And we definitely don't want to snack between meals as much as possible to enable some rest and repair if you could help it. Because remember, when you are constantly shoving food down the pipe, your body has to also keep up with the constant production of digestion. So as much as possible, you want to not snack in between meals. But if you have, let's say you get up at 5, you have breakfast at 7, you're not going to go starving from 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. You're going to get hungry in between. Have more fruit. Try to pack in as much fruit as you can in the first half of the day. The main reason is because with regards to insulin, this is important for everybody who's diabetic, but also for everybody, whether you have insulin resistance or not. Fat gets into your cells before glucose does. And there's fat and glucose in everything you eat. But at lunchtime and at dinner time, the chances of you having added fat to your food, maybe you put some olive oil on your salad, maybe you have some vegan cheese in there, maybe you're having a burger, whatever it is, the chances of you having more fat in your diet at lunch and dinner is higher than at breakfast time. So because fruit is high in monosaccharides, so it's high in glucose, but the kind that your brain wants, so that the fruit does not spike your blood glucose levels as much as so that they will stay stable, you want to have it in reduced fat amounts. So that's why I try to get all my clients and my students to have as much fruit as they can in the first half of the day. Then once lunch starts, try to reduce the amount of fruit you have. And then by 4 o'clock, shut that off. No fruit after 4 o'clock. And the main reason is two main reasons. One, because there's fat in your body there's fat in your digestive system from the lunch that you had earlier, but also because fruit is a very high positive energy food, which is wonderful, but your body is going into relax and sleep mode from 4 o'clock. So you don't want to be feeding it a fuel that's going to cause it to ramp up when it knows that it's supposed to be ramping down, right? We don't want to go against the clock. So another thing to keep in mind, one of the last things to keep in mind about circadian rhythms. Remember I said that in the morning, your body will elevate your blood pressure. It will release some cortisol, and it will elevate your body temperature to wake you up. Cortisol, which is your main stress hormone, is at its most prevalent between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. So for those of you who are either living with an autoimmune disorder or have chronic anxiety of any kind, why is it we don't want to start our day with a cup of coffee or caffeine in any way? Because your cortisol, which is your main stress hormone, is elevated, and your blood pressure is already elevated. So now, if you start your morning with a cup of coffee rather than with something calming, like either a calming tea or lemon water, which is what I really want you to have, when you have coffee first thing in the morning, you are causing the body to artificially increase those levels of high blood pressure and add to the already elevated levels of high cortisol. So you're only amplifying the body's response to stress, which is not a good thing when you live with chronic anxiety or chronic stress. So you always want to, I'm not saying don't have your cup of coffee. Coffee, according to research, coffee is best received by the body between the hours of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Anything that not just coffee. When we say coffee, we mean caffeine. So if you're one of my students, I always say, have your breakfast, have your lemon water, have your breakfast, and then you got to wait until 10 a.m. to have any form of caffeine. Whether you're having a matcha tea, whether you're having a coffee, it doesn't matter. Your body is most receptive to receiving it. The circadian rhythm for caffeine is between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Also remember that excess cortisol in the body. So if you are already an anxious person, your body is constantly pumping out small amounts of cortisol. And let's say maybe to deal with a particular situation at work, you used to require a quarter cup of cortisol, but now that situation at work has, it keeps coming up all the time where you keep thinking about it. And every time you think about it now, instead of needing a quarter cup of cortisol to deal with it, now your body needs a half a cup. And 6 years later, now it needs a full cup of cortisol. So all of that excess cortisol requires you to be in a calm state of mind and being for it to pass through your body. But if you are always in this constant state of worry or fear, lack, doubt, anxiety, conflict with yourself or conflict with others, whatever it is, whatever negative emotion you are constantly or consistently experiencing, then your body will use that, the excess cortisol gets stored contributes towards fat storage instead. So if anybody's trying to lose weight for any reason, for health reasons or whatever other reason, keeping your stress levels calm, finding a way to release anxiety and release past experiences that don't serve your present joy is really important to weight loss. So Dr. Sachin Panda's research has shown that the timing of meals has been proven when you're eating according to your circadian clock or according to your Ayurvedic to the doshas, not your doshas, but the doshas that run the day, that's been shown to reduce the prevalence of IBS, IBD, rheumatoid arthritis, metabolic disorders, including some cancers and even Parkinson's. I can tell you based on so far the research that I've been collecting through the a couple of programs that I've been running, that's true. That just by changing the times that people eat and having them eat within a 10-hour window has radically, and I'm not controlling what they eat, just I'm asking them to eat within a 10-hour window and eat 80% whole foods plant-based. And that alone has already reversed type 2 diabetes, reversed rheumatoid arthritis, completely reversed IBS and ulcerative colitis. So I can attest to it that it's true. And on myself, it helps me to maintain a steady weight. And when I really behave myself, it helps me to lose weight too. So what you want to do, so to close this chapter on circadian rhythms and food and so on, you want to take a look at what time is your first bite of food and what time is your last bite of food. You want to try to keep that within a 10-hour window. You can start with a 12-hour window and then try to shorten it at both ends. So if you wake at 7, and let's say you have your breakfast at 8, then we have 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You want to have your last bite of food no later as, if you're doing a 12-hour, then that's 6, 7, 8. So you want to make sure that all eating has stopped by 8 p.m. And then what you can do is slowly reduce the dinner time instead of the morning time. So because typically we wake when we wake because of work and so on and life. So instead of trying to shorten the morning time, let's shorten the dinner time instead. And so try to have your dinner between 6 and 7 p.m. so that by 7:30, all food is finished. So then you're going to get, let's say, for example, let's say all food is done by 7 p.m. So then you're going to get 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You're going to get a cool 12 hours of, and maybe even 13. You might get even 13 hours of fasting, of not eating. You want to try eventually to increase that as much as you can. So if it's possible that you can then move if you wake at 7, move your breakfast. So you do your lemon water and you relax and whatever. And then you have your breakfast at 9 a.m. and you have your dinner at 6 p.m. So that increases the amount of time that you're not eating. The more that you can increase that time of not eating and decrease the window of eating, the better for your health. But don't go past, don't try to restrict it more than 8 hours. Meaning keep the eating window, the smallest eating window should be 8 hours. And the longest eating window, let's say, would be 10 hours. And all you need to do, if you want to keep track of that, whether you want to keep track of it in a book or mentally, what time did I have my first bite? What time did I have my last bite? And it's always easier to shorten the dinner window than the morning window. And then you could, so once you have a better adjustment on your dinner, then you could start adjusting your morning window a little bit as well. So that's going to be the end of our talk on circadian rhythms. Sorry, I'm just going through my food. Now we're going to talk about food combining. One of my most favorite topics is food combining, food timing and food combining. So we've kind of reviewed a lot of food timing already, but food combining. This is really important for anybody, for everybody, but especially if you have been living with any form of digestive disorder. So as the notes say, food combining theory believes that putting certain foods, combining certain foods together can either improve your digestion or hamper your digestion. It also, it can lead, and I've seen this over and over again when I work with clients who have either SIBO or GERD or acid reflux. I see it over and over again, and even with IBS. Improper food combining leads to indigestion, gas, bloating, and then the more you do it, the more chronically you ignore the signs. So let me make it really clear that indigestion is not normal. It's common. It's not normal. There are foods that will naturally create gas when in your system because of the foods that they are. So legumes, that's peas, beans, and lentils, and cruciferous vegetables. They all naturally create gas, but that's why we have herbs and spices. That's why you always, when you're making any form of beans, peas, or lentils or cruciferous vegetables, you always have a robust amount of any of the digestive aiding herbs and spices. So for example, I mean, this is not a nutrition class technically right now, so I'm not going to go into full detail, but if it's a herb or a spice, use it. And I mean in its whole form, not spice combinations as much. You can use your spice combinations, like your jarred spices, but also learn how to incorporate whole spices, how to use ginger, how to use cumin, when to put in cilantro or flat leaf parsley, using oregano, rosemary, dill. Like every single herb and spice on the planet is a storehouse for anti-inflammatory properties and all aid with digestion, some more than others. So those foods are going to naturally create a bit of gas in your system, but then when you have them in the right combinations with the right herbs and spices, you don't feel it at all. But then there are other foods, like some people say, oh, whenever I have tomatoes, I get indigestion. Okay, well, what else are you having those tomatoes with? Are you pairing them with onions? That's going to cause indigestion for sure. Are you eating your tomatoes with cheese? Is it on a pizza? Are you having butter masala paneer? Are you having a taco with cheese and salsa? There are certain foods that don't combine well together. And when you force your body to digest those foods together, you're going to compromise digestion. You're going to complicate digestion as well. So let me just show you this diagram. There we go. So this is an Ayurvedic food combining guideline. So we'll just run through it quickly. Fruit. As often as possible, you want to eat your fruit by itself. The main reason is because all fruits have a different quality to them. Some are sweet, some are sour, and some are more acidic than others. So if possible, where possible and when possible, try to eat your fruits based on families. So every kind of berry, you can eat all of those berries together, mixed together. Every kind of melon can be eaten together. Apples and pears can be eaten together. All the stone fruits would be mangoes, cherries, apricots, nectarines, peaches. They can all be eaten together. As often as possible, try to eat your fruits within the families. Do your best not to have a fruit salad that combines, let's say, melons and grapes and strawberries and bananas. That is a recipe for true indigestion. Try your best not to do that. And bananas are one guy that are wonderful, wonderful food, but try your best to have that guy alone, meaning maybe with a little bit of nuts, as I said, or a little bit of non-dairy yogurt, very little, or some chocolate if you want, meaning dark, 80% or more chocolate or cacao nibs. But bananas are not actually friends with other fruits. So do your best to, whenever you're having a banana, try not to mix it. That's a lot. That one little piece of not combining fruits with other fruits, like not by eating fruits in their own family, that's a lot of information by itself. So an easier way to start is to not combine your fruits with vegetables. If you want to have your mixed fruits for now, go ahead and start first with don't mix fruits with other foods like vegetables, never with cheese or dairy, and that includes non-dairy, and never ever with meats. No, 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 no. That is a definite recipe for chronic digestive problems. And I'll give you a quick explanation. So let's say you go out to dinner and you order a spinach salad. So the typical spinach salad in every restaurant is raw spinach, goat cheese, strawberries, and raspberry-based dressing. So we've got high fiber food, sugar, sugar, sugar in various forms. And so what's going to happen now, all of the sweet foods, meaning the cheese and the strawberries and the raspberry dressing, the sugar or the monosaccharides. So the raspberry dressing has sugar in it, but the strawberries don't have sugar. They have monosaccharides. It has a package of natural sugars. Anyhow, all of those added sugars, natural sugars, are going to be digested through your system or absorbed into your bloodstream within 15 minutes of eating it. So once those sugars are removed from the foods, those foods start to break down. Whenever food breaks down, it creates, it starts to ferment. It releases bacteria, it'll release a little bit of toxins, and it's supposed to do all of that in your gut, in your digestive system, within your small intestine and your large intestine. But it's going to, and it goes through your system really fast. By really fast, I mean it'll take, as I said earlier, 6 to 8 hours going through your system versus the spinach that's going to take 12 to 24 hours to digest. So what's going to happen now, you've got the heavy spinach because it's raw, it's not even cooked. FYI, you get more nutrients from cooked spinach than from raw. Same with tomatoes and carrots. So you've got this heavy spinach, and then you've got the light foods, the strawberries, the goat cheese, and the raspberry dressing. And they're all moving through the 33 feet of your colon, but the lighter foods or the sweeter foods want to move through quickly, but they're now being held back by the spinach because it's a much more challenging food to eat. So what's going to happen is that the strawberry, the sugar, the foods that had the natural sugars in them or more natural sugars in them and artificial sugars, they're going to get stuck in a part of your colon where they're not supposed to be stuck and start to ferment in that place, because whenever food starts to break down, it's not going to stop that process. It just wants to, it's going to do that process wherever you make it stop. So to reduce the amount of indigestion, gas, and bloating and discomfort that you feel, do not combine fruits with vegetables or meats or cheeses or eggs. Try to have them on their own as often as possible. You can have it with a little bit of oats or a little bit of nuts, but as often as possible, you want to have them on their own. Then you could see legumes. Legumes, we want to remember those are high fiber, high protein foods. So we don't want to have our legumes with more high protein foods like cheese, eggs, milk, and yogurt. Even though yogurt's not a high protein food, it is a sour food. And so you want to have those more with your starches, like your whole grains or your root vegetables, and every vegetable. Legumes can be paired with every vegetable under the sun. Eggs, definitely. See, it says right there, no khichdi and eggs. Again, because of the amount of protein in it, because of the kind of food it is, we want to not combine eggs with beans or cheese or yogurt or anything like that. But you can, if you do eat eggs, try to limit it to 2 eggs a week if you can, but you can have eggs with vegetables. Grains, don't combine your grains with fruit, but you can have it in limited amounts. You can have if you have a smoothie bowl and you put a little bit of oats in there, you can have small amounts of fruit with grains, but not on a regular, consistent, everyday basis. Remember, we had the talk about honey earlier. Honey should never be cooked, heated, baked, or boiled. And I gave you that explanation already. You always want to have your honey at room temperature or colder. Lemons, this was a big surprise to me. I did not know when I was first in training. I had no idea that you shouldn't, not that you can't, you should not combine lemon with cucumber and tomatoes, because I always used to squeeze lemon on my salad. But I also had severe acid reflux. Since I've stopped squeezing lemons on my tomatoes and cucumbers and stopped eating onions, everything has been great. And I must say that on the rare occasion when I do eat out and I forget to tell the people don't put onions in my food, the indigestion comes back every time. And so you don't want to, and then there's milk. Well, in general, you want to try to avoid dairy, cow's dairy, in North America. If you're in Europe or Asia or Africa, it's a different story because they're different cows. But in North America, as often as you possibly can, try to reduce your dairy intake and go the non-dairy way. Dairy in general is sour. It is sour, sour, sour. Even if it tastes sweet on your tongue, it's sour in your digestive system when it mixes with the acids. So you see how under milk, it has dairy in, sorry, it says bananas in big capital letters. You know, when you go out to get a smoothie bowl, or you go have to all those juice places when they mix up some kind of smoothie for you in a cup, it's always bananas and it's always yogurt or milk. No, 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 no. Bananas, when bananas and milk or bananas and cow's dairy are met together in your digestive system, it curdles like yogurt, like lemon being poured onto yogurt. It breaks it. It's a bad scene. So don't do it. Nightshades. So this particular food combining guideline says that nightshades should be avoided by anyone with an inflammatory condition. I disagree with that 100%, and there is no research to prove that whatsoever. No research. I have read over and over and over looking for some research to prove that that is true. And to my knowledge, up to now, I've never seen that anywhere. Does that mean that you should constantly be eating tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant and blueberries and everything? Not on a constant everyday basis, but then who does that? Nobody does. Having tomatoes with your food now and then, having some eggplant. Eggplant is actually necessary to aid in the reversing of rheumatoid arthritis, just FYI. So I don't agree with that statement. And if somebody has more research to prove otherwise, please share it with me because I've yet to find it. And then your proteins. You want to always have them with vegetables, your animal-based proteins. So we did touch already a little bit about, let's skip point number 4, which is food timing. Let's skip to grounding because I want to come back to timing in just a moment. So grounding, maybe you've already heard about grounding. Grounding is the process by which you get physically in touch with the earth. So whether you are walking barefoot in your backyard, or you're gardening without gloves, or you go for a walk and you hug a tree so that your hands are touching the tree, or you're standing even ankle deep in some water, in a body of water, whether it's a river or the ocean or whatever it is. Grounding is an amazing way to remove inflammation from the body. Anytime you have the opportunity to walk barefoot in your front yard, backyard, whatever, or garden without wearing gloves or garden without wearing shoes, it will enable, the process enables the earth to pull I think it's a positive ions out of your body, and it helps to release stress, to remove it from your body, and it leaves the body feeling energized. It's an incredible practice. So if you have not tried grounding in terms of being in contact with the earth, whenever you get the opportunity, definitely do that. And then there's spiritual grounding, of course, through yoga and meditation, and balancing your various chakras. And by the way, the word is chakra. Chakra means wheel. It's not chakra. There are some yoga teachers out there who, for whatever reason, are saying chakra. It's not. It's chakra, like chak. It means wheel. So going back to food timing. So remember, just a quick review, because we talked about this earlier. Food timing together with food combining will aid with proper digestion. So now you know, for example, if you want to have tacos, you want to make sure that you're not, if you're going to put an animal protein in your taco, then you're going to use a vegan cheese, because cheese, dairy cheese, and animal protein don't go well together. So let's say you want, and then there's the salsa too. So make your salsa without onions and make them instead with chives or leeks, or skip the whole onion part altogether because you already have the garlic in there. And remember what I said about tomatoes, that you get more nutrients from them being cooked than from them being raw. And some people I noticed are able to digest the tomatoes cooked, but can't digest them raw. So you can test, be your own trial and error, see what works for you and what doesn't. And a really good way to start that testing process is to do a few days of khichdi. Do like a khichdi cleanse so that you cleanse your palate and you give rest to your organs and so on, and then go back and start testing yourself. So remember what I said earlier, ideally you want to have During the kapha mode, you want to have your breakfast within 2 hours. Kapha mode is between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. And you always, always, always want to have your most robust meal. Eventually get into the habit of having a nice, big, robust meal between the pitta mode is from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. So anywhere between 12 and 2. Make your life fit around your lunch, not lunch fit around your life. Don't screw that part up. That is essential. If you miss all the other meals, don't skip lunch. If you have to put it in your calendar that this is my time for lunch, I've got half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever it is, minimum half an hour for lunch, use that time. Don't skip it. And then dinner no later than your last bite, no later than 8 p.m. If possible, try not to snack in between meals. Eventually get into that routine. If you've made your robust lunch and combined your foods well at lunchtime, you're not going to be hungry until about 5 o'clock anyways. But if you do reach for a snack, let's say between 2 and 3 p.m., 3:30, before you reach for your snack, ask yourself, am I actually hungry? Or am I just doing what I've been doing for the last 20 years? At 3 o'clock, we always just go to get a muffin and a coffee. This is what I just normally do. So then you're employing habits. Habits are mindless actions. But you're going to be mindful and think, well, no, I don't feel hungry, but I haven't had a lot to drink. So often people confuse thirst for hunger. So think to yourself, what color is my pee bin? Has it been, pale yellow to clear? No, actually it's closer to yellow to orange. Ooh, so I'm not actually hungry. I'm thirsty. I better drink some matcha tea or have some miso soup, or maybe I'll have a cup of whatever water, infused water. Drink something. Wait 20 minutes. Then if you are still hungry, if you're still feeling the pains of hunger, then eat. For a snack, you want to have, because it's before 4 o'clock, you can have some fruit. If you want, dates are a wonderful afternoon snack. Dates if you're not allergic to nuts, then you could put either a cashew or a pecan in your date. And then you could put a little bit of nut butter in it, like some peanut butter. You could sprinkle in some cacao nibs or a little bit of coconut shreds. Oh my God, 3 dates a day are so good for you in so many ways. And they're really fulfilling as a wonderful snack if you really need it. They're also great for pre or post workouts. And then you have your dinner no later than, last bite no later than 8 o'clock. We want to try to bring that down to 6 p.m. And then rest. Rest. Make sure you finish your night with a healing tea. I've given you my bloat buster recipe. I've given you my healthy tea, my turmeric tea recipe. Don't change those recipes. They were handed down to me by my Ayurvedic masters. They've been handed down for centuries now. Don't change that recipe. If you're unsure if you have this or you want to use that, make sure and message me first. And finish your night with a nice calming tea. Then you say a beautiful affirmation before you go to bed. Maybe you do some gratitude, give thanks for the wonderful, magnificent day that you experienced, and release all the negative thoughts, feelings, and emotions across all time, space, and dimension, reality, and off to bed you go. And that's how living an Ayurvedic anti-inflammatory lifestyle will help to reduce chronic illness and the prevalence of autoimmune disorders. Does anybody have any questions that you would like to ask in the recording? Any comments that you'd like to make? Anything that I said that you want to ask a question about? Is everybody clear on everything? You're going to figure out what resonates well for you and start with one item at a time. So your homework is, for those of you who have not already done your dosha quiz, your homework first is to do the Banyan Botanicals dosha quiz. And then start by making small changes to your doshas. So first, If you currently skip meals, make that your number one goal, not to skip meals. Do that for at least 2 to 3 weeks. So you get into that rhythm of having a meal, a set meal at a set time. And remember to leave a little bit of leeway within your food timing. Leave with, like if you wake at 7 and you normally have breakfast at 9, great, but you've had a busy morning, so you're having breakfast more at like 9:15, 9:30, 9:45, that's okay too. Leave room for a little bit of life to fit in within that hour or 2 hours, right? Just don't skip meals. Also part of your homework, to choose sustainably grown foods. If you can afford organic, when you can afford organic, buy it. And when you can't, that's okay too. Choose foods that are sustainable for you in that they enable you to live a joyful life so that you don't feel overwhelmed in the kitchen. Make sure that you always have some frozen fruits and frozen vegetables. Don't be afraid to use them. Don't be afraid to use canned legumes. Go ahead. If you don't have time to soak legumes from dry, that's fine. Get canned. Make your life easy. Fueling your body is not a complicated thing to do. It just requires awareness, not habits. Habits are mindless actions. Routine is living with awareness. That's who you are. You are a creative being who lives with awareness. And then also part of your homework will be to try to focus your eating patterns on eating predominantly or starting with 80% whole plant-based foods, which would be the foods that offer positive energy. In Ayurveda, we learned in September, we learned that Ayurveda has high energy, neutral energy, and negative energy foods. So we want to try to always eat more of the high energy foods as often as possible. So whole foods, plant-based, more often than not. And so start doing that and start paying attention to the cues that your body is offering. And if you post in the Rituals for Recovery Facebook group, you post anything and you tag my name in it, I'll see it and then I'll cheer you on. I'll respond, and I'm always happy to cheer you on. And that's it. You've got your resources, you have your khichdi recipe, you've got my tea recipes. I've even given you my broth recipe. Oh my gosh, right. I didn't even remember that I gave you the broth recipe. So if anybody has diverticulitis, diverticulosis, IBS, and IBD, any form of digestive disorder, you want to make that broth and drink it 3 times a day for 3 weeks. And you want to limit your animal protein intake while you're drinking that broth, meaning for those 3 weeks, and limit your raw vegetable consumption. You want to use cooked vegetables while you're having that broth, and then also do some kind of mental release of stresses, and you'll find that within 3 weeks, you'll start to feel a lot better. So unless anybody has any questions for the recording, I'm going to pause it here, and it has been a joy to share this knowledge with you. I hope that it enhances your life moving forward. You can always reach me through the group. I believe you all have all of my contact information through Amanda. And I guess I will be seeing you as time goes on, I hope. Have a wonderful evening. Enjoy the rest of your night. And because this is the end of my sessions. And I wish you all a magnificent life. Thanks so much for joining me.